October monthly meeting of the Atlanta Radio Club. Thanks for being with us tonight. We're excited. Looks like we've got some new folks here based on some of the call signs, and we've got some old faces joining us tonight. So welcome. We're always excited to see new folks and some returnees that we haven't seen in a while. So great to have you with us, and some other folks that we haven't seen in the past either. We have no repeater report tonight. Normally, Stephen starts us off with that and gives us a quick little rundown on the repeaters. As far as I know, everything is as is and has been. We know we've got a small issue with our D-Star repeater still that we're trying to work on. Stephen Slider and Robin Cutshaw should be making the trip to the Bank of America Tower here, including Stone Mountain, shortly to assess the problems and get back to us and let us know. So they are operating, just not, or the D-Star repeater is operating, just not at optimal performance at this time. So it's there, just it has a hard time hearing or speaking actually sometimes too. So bear with us. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to, we'll do business afterwards. So we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Rob, and we're going to get started with our presentation for the evening. So thank you. And of course, Rob's done a stupendous job again this month, lining up another outstanding presentation. So Rob, take it away. You have to take yourself off mute, Rob.
Yeah, that's the hard part. We got another stupendous presenter this month. We were lucky to get him. Mel Granick, KS2G, as you'll notice on the screen there. He's a fellow New Yorker, which to me means he's smart. And he's from Queens. He's from the place where I would be if I was still there. You know, that general area, and where if Dick was here, Dick would be another one from there. So it's almost like a reunion. But he's a public information coordinator for the New York City, Long Island ARRL section, which I was gonna make a joke about New York. Part of Long Island's in New York City, but New York City people don't look at it that way. So anyway, I'm gonna just turn it over to get off of here and turn it over to Mel. It's gonna be on HF operations. It should be good. We'll take questions after he's done, and we're gonna record. We are recording this, and the video will be available within a few days, in case you want to see this again. So over to you, Mel. Thanks. Good evening. Good evening.
Okay. Good evening once again to everybody. Thanks for inviting me. Always happy to do one of my spiels from Ham Radio University, which I'm proud to say I'm one of the early founders, along with my good friend N2MUN, Phil Lewis, now SK, unfortunately. And this January we'll be going into our 22nd year. So mark your calendar, first Saturday in January for Ham Radio University 22. I've been giving a contesting presentation at Ham Radio University since the beginning. Last year was the first year I did not give it because since we did it online, we were limited in the number of presentations we could give. I've been giving a version of this presentation for the past 3 years. So it's, I think, pretty well honed, and we'll see about that based on how it goes here. So let me see if I can, let's see, I got to find a thing that says share screen. And you should be able to see, right? You should all be able to see my screen showing.
Yes,
okay.
we can.
You can. Okay, so let's start the show over here. Oh, good. I can see me and I can see you guys. Very good. That means I didn't have to bother with my second screen. Okay, so this is on the basics of HF operating. One thing, let me caution you, it is not about how to set up an HF station. It's not about choosing equipment or different antennas or stuff like that. I'll mention antennas in passing. There's a separate presentation about that done by the deck from N2MUN the last time he did it on the Ham Radio University website, along with a lot of other previous presentations. Go to Ham Radio University, all spelled out one word, Ham Radio University .org, and click on previous presentations, previous seminars. Anyhow, so basics of HF operating, and so on with the show. A little bit about me. I've been 44 years in amateur radio. I started out as a novice back in 1977, back in the days where you had to have a fellow ham give you the exam. This is before volunteer examiners, and a friend of mine now, AF1B, who grew up with me in Eastern Queens, gave me the test. He was living in New Hampshire at the time. I was living on Long Island. We met halfway in Hartford, Connecticut, and I took my novice test in a drive-in restaurant. I went from novice to tech to general to advanced, all inside, as you can see, of about 6-7 months. I was a regular down at the FCC office on Washington Street in Lower Manhattan. I stopped in 1978 because I was primarily a phone operator. I was having a great time on HF and didn't see the need to upgrade it extra. Getting to 13 words a minute was hard enough for me at the time in terms of CW. And I finally upgraded in 1981 because a friend of mine induced me to go for a 5-band work to all states. And to complete that, I needed to get on the Geritol net on 80-meter phone, and that met in the extra class portion of 80 meters. So I upgraded to extra in October of 1981. I originally kept my WA2SEL call, but that lasted just a few weeks because you got a lot of like, what are you doing down here in the extra class portion? Back then, and there was no QRZ.com to go check out what class of license you had. So a month later, I changed my call and got KS2G. If I had gotten a sequential call in October, I think I would have met KR2. So anyhow, that's my life story in ham radio. I'm a member of ARRL since the beginning. I'm the current president of the Order of Boiled Owls Contesting and DX Club. I'm a longtime member of the Long Island Mobile Amateur Radio Club. In fact, now a life member. I've been there long enough that they waive dues for us old guys. And I'm also a member of the Yankee Clipper Contest Club. Okay, so I'm primarily, as I said, a contest operator. I'm a casual DXer. I don't go crazy over the DXpeditions and so forth. At this point, I have I think I have 254, 255 countries mixed and so forth, but I don't do a lot going on for band fills. I'm desperately trying for 5-band DXCC. I've got 10, 15, and 20 complete. I need one more on 40, and I need about 32 more on 80. So I'm a long way away from that. My current station, HF, I have a TS890S, which I acquired recently. It replaced and is now used in tandem with a TS590S. I only have a Force 12 2-element Yagi. It's at 35 feet. It's roof mounted. So I'm not exactly a big gun. And for 80 and 40, I have a dipole mounted below that at about 30 feet, which is why I need so many DXCC entities on 80 meters. So enough about me. Let's talk about the HF band. So the first obvious question becomes, what are the HF bands? And for those of you unfamiliar, 10 frequency ranges between 1.8 and 30 megahertz, and I've listed them out here. I won't bother reading all of them out. When I first started, there were only 6 bands. There was 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10. And the so-called WARC bands were added in between in the late 70s. And of course, 60 meters was much more recent than that. You'll notice that they're all listed in terms of megahertz, except for 60 meters. And that's because 60 meter band is the only amateur radio band that's channelized, and it's in terms of 2.8 kilohertz channels. So you have to be careful about how you refer to them. So why are there so many bands? Good question. Well, each band has particular propagation characteristics. Some are better long-range bands, and some are better short-range communications. Some are better in the daytime, and some are better at nighttime, and we'll explain why in a little while. Some are better in summer, and some are better in winter. Some are better at the top of the sunspot cycle, and some are better at the bottom of the sunspot cycle, and we'll talk about that as well in just a minute. Also, you'll find that the noise levels on these bands are, somewhat different. The lower HF bands tend to be noisier overall. And also the types of QSOs that you find, the type of operators, DXers gravitate toward the 20 meters, for example, and rag chewers at night gravitate towards 75, 80 meter phone, that kind of thing. So that's why we have a lot of bands, and we're fortunate. We're the only service that has this much spectrum space and has the ability to pick and choose how we use it.
You're up there again, huh?
What's that? Okay. All right, so there are lower HF bands and there are higher HF bands. Generally speaking, the lower bands, 160 through 40 meters, tend to be better in the winter than summer, better at the bottom of the sunspot cycle. They tend to be local regional bands in the daytime and DX pretty much only at night. The higher bands, 30 through 10 meters, they're better in summer than winter, better at the top of the sunspot cycle. They're DX bands day and night at the top of the cycle. Where we are near the bottom of one cycle, DX day, pretty much closed at night. Now, the HF bands in the United States for US licensees are divided into frequency ranges for specific modes, CW, digital data, phone and image, and by license class. Novices and techs have more limited band space than generals. Generals have a little less band space than advanced, and advanced have a little less band space than extras. So they're all divided by mode and by license class. And if you have a hard time keeping track of that, it gets even worse. Of course, the bands are subdivided by mode. Now, CW, people talk about the CW subbands, but there is no CW subband. You can operate CW on any amateur frequency band anywhere. CW permitted anywhere, but generally found in the lower part of each HF band. So digital, again, permitted in the lowest part of each band overall, generally overlapping from the complete lower part of the band, but generally found just above where people gravitate for CW. And then as far as phone and image, and the reason image is on there, sort of like, let's say when they talk about image, you're talking about fast scan TV, and that really is a phone mode. It's permitted in the upper 1/2 to 3/4 of each band. You'll find lower sideband on 40 meters and below, and upper sideband on above 40 meters. Now, that's not a regulation, that's a convention. You can operate, upper sideband on 40 meters. You can operate lower sideband on 20 meters. People generally don't do it. Every once in a while, you'll come across someone who's doing that for reasons of their own, whatever it is. But again, it's a convention, it's not a regulation. So having said all this, how do you keep track? You go to the ARRL website and you download this handy dandy color-coded chart, which makes it easy to keep track of what band segments you're entitled to depending on your license class and whatever mode you're operating. So one thing to keep in mind when you're operating phone on the HF bands, single sideband phone, is you got to be careful of band edges. On single sideband, people who come from, let's say, FM don't really think much about bandwidth. But on sideband, the bandwidth is generally 2.5 to 3 kilohertz. So therefore, to stay within the band, you have to stay at least 3 kilohertz from the edge of a band or subband. So on lower sideband, you need to remember to set your VFO at least 3 kilohertz above the bottom edge of the band. And on upper sideband, you have to remember to set your VFO below the top edge of the band or subband. So an example of that is, let's look at the 40-meter general phone subband. It ends at 7175. So you need to transmit, set your VFO no lower than 7178. The top of the 20-meter phone band is 14350. So again, set your VFO no higher than 14347. Otherwise, you're going to be out of band. I once got a very friendly reminder from an OO, back when they were called OOs, a card that alerted me to this when I was a newbie, and I wasn't aware of it, and I had been operating up near the top end of a band, and the OO sent me a card and said, you were out of band, and here's why. So again, keep in mind band edges so you don't end up out of band, like this guy, II2S. This is a scan of from a recent contest a couple of years ago. And if you look at how this works, you'll see that II2S is operating. He's got his VFO set just a tad below 14348. And if you look at the width of his signal, 2.5 kilohertz. Oops, let's not do that. Hold on a second. Let me get back in here. Sorry about that. Bear with me. I got to back up here. Hold on. Here we are. Okay, band edges. Okay, here we go. So if you'll notice, he's at 14, just below 14348. He's 2.5 kilohertz wide, and the top of his signal is above 14350. So he's out of band. This was in a contest, and if you're a US operator, you should not have worked him, because if you did, you were out of band, and technically your contest contact would not be valid. All right, now this slide that I was about to go to. So what band modes on what modes on each band? Where do you go on each mode? So again, if you go to the ARRO website and you or you Google considerate operators frequency guide for amateur radio, you'll come up with this handy dandy chart. It shows you where the conventions are, as they said, the considerate operators park themselves, so that, for example, on 20 meters, if you look at the bottom of the left-hand column, you'll see that single side SSTV, slow scan TV. The convention is for those guys to operate on 14-230. Let me tell you, they are very protective of that frequency. During the heat of contest, lots of people will encroach on that frequency and will soon find themselves underneath a loud CQ from an SSTV operator. They like to protect that area. So this chart will serve you well in terms of knowing where to go and where not to go with any particular mode on a particular band. Now you get to the digital modes, what I used to call the alphabet modes, and there are tons of them. And this is, of course, too small to see in this slide. But if you go to the wx4car.org website and query amateur radio HF digital mode frequencies, you'll get this color-coded chart, which lists all the various, J codes and well, like I said, like I call the alphabet soup codes. And this is very handy to have if you're a digital operator. Of course, the frequencies for the most popular HF digital mode these days are FT8. They're listed in this chart. And again, if you go on, ask Mr. Google, frequent amateur radio frequencies for FT8, you'll come up with a chart that looks like this. The reason this is important is, by one recent estimate, FT8 these days accounts for about 75% of all HF activity. If you can't sleep in the middle of the night and turn on your radio and dial up one of these frequencies, even the higher ones, which are allegedly dead at night, you'll find FT8 going strong. It's the mode of the day, and this is one to keep in mind. One note about this is, if you operate FT8 and you use the FT8 software, it automatically knows these frequencies. There's a little pull down menu on the left side of the screen where you just pull down the band you want to be on and you click on it. You click on 40 meters, it'll put you on 7074. The other thing about FT8, for those of you not aware, is it's looking at a window surrounding that frequency, not precisely on that frequency. So the software knows how wide a bandwidth to look for. So again, this is how to keep track of what modes where. So let's talk about a little bit of HF propagation, because HF propagation, long distance communication, is what HF is all about. It's the whole reason that you want to get on there. So there are two kinds of transmission waves. There's ground waves and there is sky waves. And as the little stick figure illustration shows you, the ground wave follows the ground. And the problem with ground wave is it's limited by the curvature of the Earth. If you would extend that arrow that you see on the illustration in either direction, eventually the curvature of the Earth would be falling off to the left or falling off to the right, and therefore it limits what you can do. It's basically, ground wave is basically line of sight, and that's probably what you're used to if you're a VHF UHF operator. You line of sight to either to your repeater site or line of sight to the other station that you're working simplex. Sky waves, as they say, they call them sky waves because they go up in the sky, and they're the important ones when it comes to HF propagation and getting the most out of the HF bands. We'll take a look at the ionosphere because it's what makes this all work. And here's an illustration of the various layers of the ionosphere. On the left side of the globe, you'll see that there are 4 layers, starting with the one closest to the surface, the green D layer, the E layer above that, and 2 F layers, F2 and F1. And you'll notice that there are 4 of them on the left side of the globe, which is in daylight. And as you move to the right, to the east, to the darkness side, the night side of the globe, you'll see that each of the layers gradually disappears around the terminator, the sunrise sunset mark, or the what's known as the gray line. You start seeing that the D layer starts to disappear, gets smaller and smaller. The E layer starts getting smaller and smaller. And what happens in the night side of the globe is that the two F layers merge. The F1 and F2 layers merge and become one at night. This will be important in a couple of minutes because you'll understand why, as a result of this, some bands are good in the daylight and some bands are better at night. Okay, so keep this in mind. We'll come back to it and this illustration in just a minute or two. So the thing about the ionosphere and sky waves is that the ionosphere, which is a layer of electrically charged particles, ions, high in the atmosphere, because they're electronically charged, when RF hits them, RF waves hit them, they can be scattered and they can be refracted, or they can be bent the same way light waves are refracted in a prism that you've probably all seen when you were in elementary school. So the ionosphere takes the sky wave and bends it and pushes it back down toward Earth. And this is what makes HF propagation work. Skywave refraction is what happens and what makes long distance skip possible. Here's an illustration that shows you how this works. If you look on the left side, we're in New York, for example, or down in Atlanta, and you're beaming toward the west, okay? And you'll notice at the different, at the frequency of this illustration, which is at 28 megahertz, 10 meters, you'll notice if the sky wave goes straight up, it gets refracted, it gets bent, but not enough to be pushed back down to Earth, goes up into the sky, disappears. And the two left-hand arrows show that. Now, the two right-hand arrows show a narrower angle, critical angle, low angle of radiation, which is what you want to look for, by the way, in an antenna for DX purposes. You want an antenna that has a low angle of radiation, which is one reason that HF antennas work best when you put them up high, when you put them up between 50 and 75 feet on 20 meters, for example. That critical angle, as you can see, determines whether the sky wave will be refracted sufficiently to come back down to Earth. And depending on what that angle is, it shows you, if you remember your geometry, your triangulation, it will show you where your signal will come down. So in this illustration, for example, the angle of radiation in the third line from the left is high enough to be refracted back to Earth, but misses Chicago, doesn't quite get to Denver, okay? In the leftmost wave, you can see that the angle of radiation, the critical angle, is somewhat smaller. And with the sort of same amount of refraction, what happens is the wave skips over Chicago, but lands conveniently in Denver, where you can hear it. This is why when you tune the band, you'll hear a lot of stations from one area. It'll sound like this, quote, like a pipeline to a particular location, but you won't hear anything from a different location that may be closer into you or further away, because again, the refraction here may be such that any place west of Denver, the refraction isn't sufficient to get the wave there. So this is the thing to remember. If you remember this illustration, you'll understand why you're hearing what you're hearing on HF and why oftentimes you'll be hearing only one side of a conversation. So in this illustration, for example, you're tuning your radio and you tune into a signal, and there's a guy in Denver, and you hear him chatting, and he finishes his transmission and he says, you know, over to you, Bob. And now you don't hear anything. You don't hear who he's talking to. Well, that may be because whoever he's talking to is in a different skip zone, right? He may be talking to someone in Chicago because that skip zone may be working from Chicago with the right angle of radiation to Denver, but it's not working from Chicago to New York. So the guy in Denver hears Chicago, but you don't. Okay, got that straight? Now, to make it even better, there's such a thing called multi-hop propagation.
Sorry, Mel, fast question.
Sure.
Would you make these slides available afterwards?
Sure. And in fact, this whole deck, you can find a version of this whole deck on the Ham Radio University website.
There too. Okay, thanks.
Okay. I'll mention that at the end. Okay, so now here's the next sort of interesting little wrinkle, and that's multi-hop propagation. And you can see how this works again. On the far left, this time we're looking at an 80-meter signal, right? 3.5 megahertz. And the signal on the left is going up into the atmosphere, into the ionosphere, not getting sufficiently refracted to go anywhere. Same thing with the second line to the left. Now you look at the critical angle. Now you find some sky waves that are being refracted down to Earth, but some of them are useful and some of them are not. So the fourth one from the left, third one from the left is being refracted down from New York, but falls short of Chicago, for example. So that might be good for someplace in maybe Ohio, someplace like that, but not Chicago. Now you move to a different angle, and you can see that you have a sky wave, and it will get you to Chicago, but it won't get you to Denver because of the angle of radiation. Now you decrease the angle of radiation still further, and your sky wave will skip over Chicago, but still won't get you to Denver. It'll land you someplace in between. What's your geography? It'll land you someplace in, I don't know, Minnesota, right? And here's the beauty of it. Once the wave comes back down to Earth, the Earth has a certain amount of reflectivity on its own, and that same wave can be bounced back up, back to the ionosphere, depending on the angle, and again, hit the ionosphere, be refracted down, and hit Denver. So here you have a way of propagating a signal from New York to Denver by way of someplace in the Midwest, because that's where the signal lands. So these are the two things to keep in mind. We'll go back to this one. Sometimes your refraction and skywave gives you a direct connection. Sometimes it gives you an indirect connection by way of multi-hop propagation. And this is what makes HF both exciting and maddening, because you never know exactly how this is going to work, especially when you talk about what's going on in that ionospheric level. Okay, so here's the question. Knowing all this, how do I know which bands to use when, depending on where I'm trying to reach? Okay, generally speaking, the lower frequency bands, 160 through 40, they're good for ground wave in the daytime. And I'll explain again why that's so in a minute. Local and regional contacts in the daytime, your best bands are probably actually 40 meters and 80 meters, 160, 60 a little bit. Skywave at nighttime, skywave for DX on these bands at night, but not in the daytime. Conversely, in the upper frequency bands, 30 through 10 meters, you get both ground wave and skywave in the daytime, although most people don't use these bands for local and regional contacts in the daytime, but they both work. But you get both ground wave and skywave day and night when the bands are open. Excuse me. My permanent postnasal drip. Okay, got it? Lower frequency bands, ground wave day, DX night, upper bands, ground wave, DX, both day and night. All right, and here's why. Again, remember this illustration. What happens is, in the daytime, the D-layer and E-layer are there, before you can reach the F layer, which is the important layer in terms of HF propagation. I'll mention parenthetically, sometimes you'll see references to the E layer. You hear references to E-skip. That's most common for people who operate 6 meters. That's the dream of 6-meter operators, is E-skip. Anyhow, daytime, D-layer, E-layer, F2, F1. Nighttime, just the F layer. So take a look at this. What happens in the lower frequency bands, here's an example of an 80-meter wave at the top and a 10-meter wave at the bottom. At the top of this illustration, if the D layer is in existence, the 80-meter wave, quote, spends a lot of time in the D layer. so much time that it gets absorbed rather than refracted. And what happens is an 80-meter wave, when the D-layer is active, the 80-meter wave gets dissipated. You look at the bottom illustration, you'll see the 10-meter wave passes right through the D-layer, spends very little time in the D-layer, and therefore doesn't lose much of its punch, let's call it, in the D-layer, and can make its way up to the F layer, which is where the best refraction occurs. Right? So this is the key to understanding why the low bands don't work well for DX in the daytime. It's D-layer absorption. Moving along, frequency level and ionization level. Again, the ionosphere, the level of ionization can vary. We'll talk about the reasons for that in just a minute. You look at this illustration, again, look at the top, and you can see the difference of what happens between two different frequencies. Up the top, you have a 28 megahertz 10-meter wave at the top, and you have an 80-meter wave at the bottom. If the ionization is low, the 80-meter wave will be refracted down to Earth and be beneficial, but the 10-meter wave will pass right through the light level of ionization. There's not enough energy in the ionosphere to refract it back down to Earth. When you look down at the bottom of this illustration and you see a high level of ionisation, then the 10-meter wave gets pushed back down because there are enough ions in the ionosphere to refract it or reflect it back down to Earth. Okay, so again, it's a combination of ionospheric ionization, level of ionization, and the frequency that you're working. So now comes the question. Here we go. What causes the different levels of ionization? You probably all know this or heard about it, but ionization is determined by sunspot activity. There's a whole level of physics involved in this, but basically it comes down to this. More sunspots, more ionization. More ionization, more DX at higher frequencies. Simple formulation. Sunspots high, ionization high, good DX at higher frequencies. Sunspots, again, as you probably know, they rise and fall in an approximate 11-year, it's about an 11.5-year cycle. This was discovered back in 1843 by Samuel Heinrich Schwab. He retrospectively started numbering the cycles. He gave the 1755 to 1766 cycle number 1, and we've been following them ever since. Here's a chart, a long distance view of sunspots going back to the 1600s. You probably heard the term Maunder minimum. That's when there seemed to have been almost no sunspots whatsoever. But if you look starting in the 1750s, where Schwab started his calculations and observations, and you can see the rise and fall of the cycle. It's pretty regular. The amplitude changes quite differently, but the frequency is pretty much that 11 years, 11.5 years. The best cycle was cycle 19, and it had a peak of sunspot numbers, as you can see, approaching 250 there in 1959. So those were the good old days, those of you who are old enough to remember and were ham radio operators in that. So here's a more recent view of the different cycles. I told you I was licensed in 1977. I got in at the beginning of cycle 21, the bottom of cycle 20. Cycle 20, the beginning of cycle 21 was a really good cycle. I thought it was gangbusters. And you can see relative to some of the earlier cycles to the left side of this graph, it's moderate, not as good as the one, two to the left of it, cycle 8, cycle 19, which we said was the best one ever, but pretty good relative to 18, cycle 18, cycle 17, etc. Cycle 21 was pretty good, but that seems to have been the recent high point. If you'll notice, the strength of the cycles seems to be declining. Cycle 22 was, just slightly less than cycle 21. 23 was a little less than 22. 24 was significantly less than 23. So where are we now? That's the $64,000 question, which of course 64,000 bucks ain't worth much these days. But here you are on the left side. Here's a graph that basically gives you a graphic representation of cycle 24. We're down in the middle of the graph in 2021. You can see we're just coming up from the bottom. The red line indicates the sort of consensus of where the prognosticators think this cycle is going. And again, there's a lot of different ones there. Again, this is a black art, and you can go online and find all kinds of predictions. Some say it's going to be terrific. Some say it's going to be horrible. The consensus seems to be that it's going to be about as good as cycle 24. Maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse. But this is what you can look forward to in the next 11 years. So all this having been said, how do you know which band to operate when? Okay. Back in the day, again, those of you old enough to remember, these handy dandy propagation prognostication charts used to appear in QST magazine every month. And then for a long while, they were posted on the ARR website. They are no longer because they're not all that useful. When they were published in QST magazine, bear in mind that the lead time for the magazine was almost 2 months. So that these charts were developed 2 months ahead of publication, and who knows what could have happened between now and then. But basically, these charts show 3 graphs, as you said. If you look at the upper left graph, for example, if you were interested in trying to contact the Caribbean, on the left hand, the vertical axis is the band in megahertz, and on the horizontal axis is the time in UTC. And the graphs show the 3 levels of propagation you can expect. The lowest one is called the lowest possible frequency. The green one in the middle, which is one everybody would look for, is the MUF, the maximum usable frequency. That's the one you would likely see. And the red one is the highest possible frequency. So again, looking at this chart for whatever month it was published, if you looked at that, if you wanted to work the Caribbean from the West Coast, your best bet was to be on the air between 1200 and 2000 universal time, GMT, Zulu, call it what you will, and you could expect to have good propagation up to and including perhaps 21 megahertz, up to about 15 meters. On a good day, you look at the red chart, 10 meters would be open. So that's how it used to work. And used to look at these things and sort of guesstimate what was likely to happen based on a prognostication that was 3 months old. Today, we have the benefit of better science and better distribution of information. Solar cycle varies day to day, even hour to hour. And these days you can get a look at what conditions are on an hour by hour basis. If you go to the website, hamqsl.com, down at the bottom, you'll see on the home page a raft of solar data, so-called space weather. Solar HTML gives you this chart, and this appears on the home page of a lot of websites. Most notably, QRZ.com has this, and this is a screenshot I took of the solar and HF band conditions earlier today, and you'll notice that again. Down at the bottom, it gives you a prognostication of what the HF conditions are like at the particular moment that the chart is, and you can see that in the daytime things were not looking too good on the high bands. 12 meters, 10 meters, 15, 17, fair. On 30 and 20. Good on 40 and 80 at night. Now, there's a lot of information here, and this is, again, we could do a whole presentation on how to interpret solar data, but here's what I look for. On the top left corner is SFI, that's the solar flux index. And it's simple, higher is better. The higher the number you can see there is better. The solar flux index is a crude measure of ionization, and 87 is not great, but it's better than it's been. Those of you who might have been looking at this, it's been languishing in the 60s. for a long time. It's getting up to 87. It's peaked up over 100 a day or two. So that's the level of ionization, but it's complicated by the next two numbers below it, the A index and the K index. So you want to look for a high SFI and a low A and a low K index. To the right is the sunspot number, and that's linked to the SFI, but I personally don't find it as useful as the SFI, because the SFI is giving you sort of a real-time reading of what the ionization level is. So you want to look for high SFI, low A, and low K indices. Simple about that. Bear with me 1 second here. Let's get something else off this screen. All right, moving right along. The next thing you can do is there are online propagation calculators, which will give you sort of a real-time look at the path you want. This is sort of like those graphs we saw that used to appear in QST. So this is the most popular one, voacap.com. It's free. You go on this website, and you can probably see down at the bottom in the middle, it says the transmitter site where you are. You put in your QTH, and then you look at, like, where do I want to get to? And on the right side is the receive location. You plug that in, and it gives you a representation of what you see here. This is a representation of a path from New York to Australia. Okay. And you can see on the left-hand side what the path is. And at the moment this is being calculated, you can see where the daylight is and where darkness is. You can see the gray line, that kind of thing. On the right-hand side, there's a circular version of the same kind of graph that you saw in QST, which shows you which bands in a color-coded way are best for the path that you're looking for based on the time. So the time is in the clock on the outer rim in UTC, right? 0-100 hours, 2400 hours at the top, and goes around clockwise. And on the inner circles, you can see the different bands. 80 is the innermost circle, 60 meters, 40 meters, 30 meters, 20 meters, going out concentrically. So VOACAP is very handy if you're on the radio and you're saying, gee, I wonder if I can get into Europe tonight on 40 meters, and you would plug in your parameters, and VOACAP would give you a prognostication of what the band conditions look like at that particular time. Another tool that's out there, dxmaps.com, has this real-time path views. On this map, what you're looking at the time it was taken, you can see in the tabs at the top, this is a 40-meter look at what's going on in the bands, and in each of those lines is a contact being made, contact being reported by the various monitoring stations around the world. And you can see 40 meters. I forget what time this was done. I pulled the screen capture a couple of years ago, but you can see lots of activity covering the United States on 40 meters. Fair amount over on the right-hand side into Europe, a handful into Central Africa, a fair number down into Central and South America. Nothing going out to the Far East on 40 meters at whatever time of day this was taken. So this is another one to look for. Or if you've got a handy dandy modern radio with a band scope, you turn on the radio, you dial up the band you're looking for, and you say, what do I hear? This is a screenshot of the band scope on my radio that was taken on October 2nd at the time indicated, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, local time, 1805 universal time. And this is what the 20 activity looked like on 20 meters. On the far left is phone activity. The bright vertical line to the right, or higher in frequency from the CW. I'm sorry, I said phone, I meant CW. CW activity on the left, the bright vertical line to the right, higher in frequency from CW, is, as I mentioned, FT8. And you can see by the level of brightness that there's lots of FT8 going on at the time this screenshot was taken. You move further up the band, then off to the right-hand side, you get into the single sideband section, and you can see that there's lots of activity. not any particularly strong signals. There's one there in the middle that you can see that's bright yellow. All the other ones are kind of bluish and so forth. And the radio shows you what's going on. So if you have a radio with a band scope, it's the handiest tool to know whether it's worthwhile to try to use a particular band. If I had clicked the radio over onto 15 or 10 meters, when I did this, you would see the band scope was almost completely blank. On 15 meters, you probably would see a little bit of FT8 activity, believe it or not, because FT8 is a very weak signal mode, and you can see FT8 activity when the band is almost closed. And even on 10 meters, you're likely to see that. So if you have a band scope, or if you have an SDR, a software defined radio that you can hook up to your older radio. I did that with my Kenwood TS590S before I got the 890S, and you can have a band scope, and that's the handiest tool to know at any particular time. Gee, is it worth me getting on the radio? During contests, I use this all the time. Right, I'll be on 20 meters, and I'll be making some contacts, and things are slowing down. And I'll say to myself, well, I wonder if there's anything on 15, and I'll click the radio onto 15 meters. And if the scope is blank, I know there's no point calling CQ on 15 meters. If I see a few signals, I can go in there and try to work those guys and see how strong they are and so forth, see if, and listen for a while and see if they're working people and see if it's worthwhile. So band scope is probably the number one real-time tool in knowing whether it's worthwhile to operate on a particular band. And again, you not only look at these signals, but you listen to what these signals are. You see where they're coming from. You know the direction of the propagation and things like that. All right, so how do you make contacts? Those of you not familiar with procedure on HF, it's a little different from VHF, UHF repeaters. On a repeater, not sure what the conventions are down in your area in Atlanta. Here on Long Island, if there's no activity that you hear on the repeater, you key your microphone and you give your call sign and you say KS2G listening, and that's like calling CQ. If there's a QSO in progress and you want to get into the middle of it, you just drop your call into the dead space between the turnovers. On HF, you can call CQ. Right, and doing that, as I said, you should tune or look at the band to get conditions, an idea of what conditions are like. Listen for a clear frequency. Again, listen for a wild frequency that may seem to be clear, may not be because of what we talked about before in terms of skip zones. Ask if the frequency is in use. Is KS2G, is this frequency in use? I usually ask twice. Sometimes a voice from the void will come down and say, it sure is. Never mind. On CW, QRL, anybody using this frequency? Again, because of how propagation works, you can often hear only one side of the conversation, so it's a good idea to check to see if the frequency is in use before you call CQ. On phone, how do you call CQ? You call CQ. CQ, calling CQ 20 meters. KS2G calling Kilo Sierra 2 Golf. KS2G near New York City, calling CQ 20 meters. How long? Some people like short CQs. Some people like long CQs. I like to, make it long enough so that if someone's tuning across the band, he'll find me. Not so long that someone finds me and gets bored that I haven't, waited for an answer. I like to sometimes, I often give near New York City to let people know where I am, because call letter district numbers don't mean anything anymore. A lot of you guys down there I see have two-land calls. So it's nice to let people know where you are these days. An interesting question that often arises, saying, why do people say calling CQ 20 meters? Why do you say you're on 20 meters? You know what band you're on. When people tune 20 meters, they'll hear you. They know what band you're on. Why do you say CQ calling 20 meters? The answer goes back to the early days of, I mentioned, when there were only 6 bands. Discounting 160 meters, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 are all harmonically related. You could be calling CQ on 40 meters, which is 7 megahertz, right? And your second harmonic, your first harmonic comes out at 14 megahertz, puts you on 20 meters. So you could conceivably be calling CQ on 40 meters and someone's hearing you on 20 meters. So that's where that convention comes from. It's not a rule, but it's an interesting thing to do. And most people still do it. Even though most radios now, the spurious emissions are so low that it's unlikely that that's going to happen, but you never can tell. On RTTY and on CW, you call CQ, you call CQ, your call sign comes second, CQ, DE, KS2G, and you end up with K, which means I'm listening for a response. You can make contacts, of course, by responding to CQs in a casual contact. When the station that's calling CQ finishes, you call them by call sign, W2HF, this is KS2G over. On CQ and RTTY, W2HF, DE, KS2G, K. Your call sign always goes last. Some newbies don't understand that. It's just a convention, particularly on busy frequencies and contest weekends, and on RTTY, for example, to try to figure out who owns the frequency. It's the station whose call sign comes last. If you're interested in DX and getting into the scrum of DX pileups, DX expeditions, when you respond to a DX expedition calling CQ, you just give your call sign. You give it phonetically on phone. Press the microphone button, Kilo Sierra 2 Golf. And then the question is, are you calling the station in the right place? And the question is, are you calling the DX station on his or her frequency? And is that the thing to do? Probably not. If it's a DX expedition, the DX station is probably working split. Almost all DX expeditions operate split. So for those of you not familiar, what's operating split? Split frequency operation is transmitting and receiving on different frequencies. It's like the offset when you use a repeater. You're transmitting on one frequency, the repeater is hearing you and spitting out your signal coming back on a different frequency. So split frequency operations. How do you know if the station's working split? How do you know where they're listening? Okay, so the DX station, let's say he's working phone. The DX station will say, I'm up 5 or up 5 to 10. That means wherever he is, he's listening 5 kilohertz up from his transmit frequency in a little range there, up 5 to 10 kilohertz. The DX stations, for example, he's transmitting on 14116, and he says 14116, 200, 225. That means he's listening 14200 to 14225. So that's how split works, and to make that happen, you need to learn how to use your rigs dual VFOs. Almost all modern rigs for the last, I don't know, certainly 10, 15 years, almost all of them have dual VFOs, if not dual receivers. Older stations, older radios may use an external VFO. My first HF phone radio was a Kenwood TS520S, did not have a second VFO, but they had an accessory called a VFO 520, which was an extra cost external box that plugged into the radio that gave you a second VFO so that you could work split. I mentioned working contests. That's what I spend most of my on-air time doing. Contests are a lot of fun. A lot of people find them annoying. They fill up the bands. They're very popular. Contest operating is pretty simple. The goal behind every contest is pretty much the same. It's basically to work as many stations as you can in as many places as possible, as quickly as you can. Every contest has unique rules, what frequencies you should be on, what the modes are, what the contest exchange is. That's the information you have to give the other station and receive from the other station to make a valid contact. To find out what contests are on and all about them, go to contestcalendar.com. It's a complete or the most complete calendar of contests. If you go to contestcalendar.com, you'll see there's calendars. There's contests on that calendar almost every day of the week, most major weekends. When you're in a contest, again, you can do two things. You can call CQ, that's called running. You call CQ and have stations come to you, or you can tune the band and respond to stations that are calling CQ. That's called searching and pouncing. Okay, now we get to the question of logging. Okay. There's basically no legal requirement for ham radio station operators to keep a log, and there has not been since 1983. There's a couple of sort of exceptions to that. If you look in the rules in this section on 60 meters, you'll see a notation of the affected radiator power on that band is 100 watts, and if you're using anything other than a dipole on that band, you have to sort of indicate it in your station records, which amounts to a log. There are also some somewhat arcane requirements that may apply to international third-party traffic. But for the most part, basically, there's no requirement any longer to keep a station log. But keeping a station log is a useful record of your operating activity. And of course, if you're interested in getting QSLs and qualifying for awards and such, you need to have a log, you need to have a record of what you've done. And the information required for a QSL, the date and time in UTC, the frequency band and the mode that you're on, and the call sign at the station you work. That's all you need to keep in your log. That's the information you'll send to get a QSL, a confirmation. Oftentimes you put down a signal report. It's not a requirement. Notes, name, QTH, the equipment you were using, the power you were running, what antennas you were using, what stuff he was using. Nowadays, a lot of people keep a lot of notes, and you run into people more than once in a while, and you have information about the last time you made contact. If you do want to keep a log, you can do it old school. You can do it on paper. The ARRL bookstore still sells the paper logbook that you see on the left, and you can keep a paper log. There used to be a requirement when there was logging of you had to log every transmission, and if you're operating mobile, the ARRL sold the little mini log you see on the right. I'm not sure if they still have that in the bookstore or not, so that you could keep notes, keep your log in your car in a convenient manner. Of course, nowadays, almost everybody who's logging is using a computer. There's lots of computer logging programs out there. I've listed just a handful of them. I may have left out the one you like the best or have heard the most about. They fall into sort of two categories. There are general purpose loggers for people who are chasing DX, for example, and are looking for rewards and so forth. There are a few of them listed here. Ham Radio Deluxe, of course, is far more than just a logging program. It has a lot of modules in it, does a lot of different things, but has a log. And for contests, there are special contest logging programs. The far and away favorite is N1MM Plus. It's the most fully featured contest logger out there, and it's free, no charge. WriteLog is also very popular, but it's a commercial program and you pay for it. I'm not a Mac or a Linux guy, but as you can see on this thing, I've given you the name of a couple of loggers for the Mac and Linux worlds. So we said one of the reasons for keeping a log is to get QSLs. And how to get QSLs. Okay, you can still exchange printed cards like the one in the upper right-hand corner from my good friend N2MUN, who's SK, unfortunately. And if you're going to exchange cards direct, stateside, as a courtesy and to improve your return rate, include a self-addressed stamped envelope. I think first class postage just went up to 55 cents, if I remember correctly, and maybe going even higher. So it's not inexpensive for the station you work to send you a card. So an SASE does two things. It makes it economically feasible, and it makes it convenient because the recipient station need not find an envelope and stamps and all that kind of stuff. QSL managers for DX, that's a domestic station that handles the DX station's cards. QSL bureaus, the ARRL outgoing QSL service available to all members. You can go on the website and get details for that. For incoming cards from DX stations who send via bureau, your W4 QSL bureau is run by the Carolina DX Association. You can go to their website. It'll give you details on how to sign up for that. I'm not sure. I think they take money, and rather than you have to send them postage or envelope, stuff like that. And of course, electronic logging, ARRL Logbook of the World, by far the most popular. That's the one you use to qualify for ARRL awards. EQSL, some people like it, some people don't. It's, you know, it has its own set of awards. Club Log is another one. QRZ.com has a logbook, so there's a lot of options out there for that. And of course, all that's about qualifying for awards. Lots of awards out there. The most popular ones: DX Century Club for 100 entities, Worked All States, 5-band Worked All States, Worked All Continents. These are ARRL awards. CQ has its own set of awards. There are lots of awards and certificates to be had.
A quick question for you, Mel.
Sure, go ahead.
It's about the DX, the QSL bureaus.
Yes.
You're connected to them based on what number is in your call, not necessarily where.
That's correct.
Okay.
You go by your call. So you would be in the two-land call bureau, which is the North Jersey DX Association.
Okay. There's so many vanity call signs out there.
Yeah, it goes by the number in your call sign, not where you're physically located. Okay, simple. And again, it works differently. North Jersey DX Association, you send them money via PayPal. They supply the envelopes and the stamps. Some DX bureaus ask you to send envelopes, and they put on stamps. Some ask you to send envelopes and money and whatever. So you go to the DX bureau, and I'll tell you how it works. So let me tell you real quickly here how to get the most out of your HF transceiver. And the reason I do this is because when I've done this in person at Ham Radio University, that the audience is almost like 95% techs who are just upgrading or have just upgraded to general, and they may have just bought or planning to buy an HF transceiver, and they're used to a radio that has like two knobs, it has on off, volume, and squelch, and frequency selection, and that's it. And they get an HF radio, and it's like, what is all this stuff? What am I looking for? I look online, I'm trying to decide on a rig, and it's got all these features, and what do they all do? So here's a quick rundown of what all the knobs and buttons and menus on your HF radio do. We'll start with transmitter controls. The first one is RF power output for CW digital and sideband, and it's simple. That's how much power your radio is going to put out. Most HF radios, not all, are 100 watts. There are some higher power ones. There are QRP ones. If you have a 100-watt radio and you want to run lower power for digital to be kinder to the finals and so forth, the RF power output control will let you turn down the gain on that. The microphone level is the level of your microphone, and it combines with speech processing and compression, which are the same thing: speech processing or audio compression. Speech processing increases the average RF power and adds to the punch of the audio, because sideband is the amount of power put out in sideband is determined by the amount of AF going into the radio, the amount of audio going into the radio. So when you set up your microphone level and your speech processing, you want to get it as high as possible without distorting. And that's where this ALC comes in. There's an automatic level control indicator, usually on your RF output meter. So you want to set up the mic level and the processing such that you don't exceed the ALC limit described in your radio. There's also transmit audio equalization, which is the same as equalization in audio recording, musical recording. It controls the highs and lows. You can emphasize highs or lows, or de-emphasize highs or lows for maximum intelligibility. This is most useful depending on the different microphone that you may use with your radio. Different microphones have different characteristics, combined with your voice to have a different sort of sound. And you can use transmit audio equalization to get the best sounding audio that you can. You use the transmit audio monitor to set that up, so that what you do is you turn on your transmit audio monitor, and you transmit your radio into a dummy load and you listen to what you sound like. Same thing while you're on the air. Some radios get even more sophisticated. My TS890S not only has a transmit audio monitor, it has an audio scope. I can look at the waveform of my audio when I adjust it. And last but not least, when you go on the air, ask for audio reports from the stations that you work to say, how does it sound? Does it sound natural? Does it sound tinny? Are you picking up any background noise? Or do I have a fan running in the background? If I'm running a linear amplifier, are you picking up the fan noise from the amplifier, which would be an indication that your audio is probably too hot. So ask for reports, but don't go by any one report. People are notoriously bad about giving audio reports. You talk to a few people on the air, you get a consensus of what you sound like. So here's how compression works, audio compression. On the left-hand side is a waveform of a typical voice transmission, right? And you'll notice the average is, pretty low, but the peaks are very high, right? So that your RF output meter will peak up very high, but you really won't be very strong. And when you put in properly adjusted audio processing, audio compression, it squeezes down those peaks down into where the average is. It basically creates a new peak for the average. In other words, if you look at the two graphs, you'll see on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, the lower end of the waveform for average is in about the same place, but the peak on the right-hand side has been squeezed down so that the peaks of the average, let's call it, is higher, and that's what gives you the maximum output of your single sideband transmitter. Transmit keying controls, Vox, voice operated transmit, that you set this up and the transmitter is keyed by sensing the speech. When you start talking, the radio goes into transmit. When you stop talking, it goes back into receive. And there are some adjustments on this that have to be taken into account, how sensitive it is, so that it's not so sensitive so that when you breathe, it keys your transmitter. Also, when you're talking and when you stop, you don't want it dropping out after every syllable. You want it to sort of stay long enough so that you're not constantly rekeying the transmitter. And then anti-vox is how much of a resistance to outside noise, background noise and so forth, besides your voice that the Vox is set up to. So there are some adjustments that have to be made. You have to play with Vox a little bit to get that right. CW break-in is sort of similar to Vox. It's automatically switching between transmit and receive. Full break-in, known colloquially as QSK, your radio switches to transmit, from transmit to receive immediately when the contacts are open. In other words, as soon as you close the straight key or the paddle, the radio goes into transmit, and as soon as you release it, the contacts open and the radio goes back into receive. And again, if this is properly adjusted, you can have a sort of conversation. You can hear what's going on the band in between words or in between letters if you're a skilled CW operator. And using full break-in, you can go back and forth with another station almost conversationally. Semi break-in is similar to that, except when the key contacts open, the switch to receive is delayed by a duration, a certain amount. It's like the hang time that I talked about in Vox. And usually semi break-in hang time is controlled by the Vox setting in the radio. Tuners, automatic antenna tuners that are built into many, many radios today. It's automatic. It automatically matches an out of resonance antenna impedance to 50 ohms. Ham radios want to see a 50 ohm load. If they see anything too far off a 50 ohm load, the SWR goes too high, they get very unhappy, and they fold back, they lower themselves to protect the final output transistor. So an automatic antenna tuner maintains full output power even though your antenna may be mismatched. There are limits to automatic antenna tuners built into radios. Most of them are designed to match mismatches of up to maybe an SWR standing wave ratio of 3:1, not much higher than that. So if using a way out of resonance antenna, the internal automatic antenna tuner might not be the way to go. You might want to look at an external tuner. Now over to the receive side, AF gain, that's your volume control, simple. RF gain, that's the radio frequency gain. That manually adjusts receiver sensitivity. Most of the time, you just leave that at maximum, but there are certain instances where you can play with the balance between turning down RF gain and turning up AF gain to dig weak signals out of the noise background. But most of the time, you leave the RF gain all the way up, and you let the automatic gain control, AGC, take care of the rest. Automatic gain control adjusts the receiver sensitivity in response to changes in signal strength. There are usually two settings: fast response for CW and slow for single sideband. Receiver sensitivity controls. An RF attenuator reduces receiver sensitivity by a set amount. In many radios, there's more than one setting. My 890 has two RF attenuator settings. RF preamp is the mirror image of that. It increases the receiver sensitivity by a set amount. In my 890, there are 3 RF preamp settings. It can make itself real sensitive. The squelch control that exists on many radios, particularly those that have FM built into it, as some modern radios do for 10-meter FM, of course, works the same way as on a VHF, UHF radio. Mutes the receiver when there's no signal present. You usually just leave it wide open, except for FM. Receiver incremental tuning. This is Yaesu calls it a clarifier that changes your receive frequency without changing your transmit frequency. You call CQ, someone answers you, he's not quite on your frequency. You don't want to change your frequency to match his, because then he may be off and you find yourself chasing each other up and down the band. So you use RIT to get him tuned in so that you can hear him clearly. XIT, transmit incremental tuning, is the reverse of that. It changes your transmit frequency without changing your receive frequency. If you don't have an external VFO and the DX station is not using a big spread, the XIT may have enough of a range to use it as if you had an external VFO. Now here are the key ones: interference controls, noise filters or noise reduction, and noise blanker. 2 different things. Don't get them confused. Noise reduction, sometimes called noise filtering, reduces steady background noise. This is things like power line noise, steady reduction in background noise. Noise blankers reduce pulsating background noise. These are things like in the old days, automotive interference from automotive sources, or let's say an electric motor in your house that has a pulsing thing, right? So that's what a noise blanker is. Don't confuse the 2 of those. Most radios now have both of those. Notch filters, this is where it comes to interference from other stations. A notch filter nulls a specific interfering signal, most often things like heterodynes. Here's what it looks like graphically. On the left-hand side, the U shape is the bandpass of your radio. The little hill at the bottom is the signal that you're listening to on single sideband, and the vertical line is that annoying heterodyne whistle, right? And if you have a notch filter and can tune it to that exact frequency, it will eliminate that heterodyne without affecting the signal that you're after. Bandwidth controls work in a similar way. IF shift is one of the more common ones in recent years, okay? On the right-hand dotted line is your original bandpass, and you can see there's an interfering signal and the desired signal both inside your bandpass. If you use IF shift and turn the knob and move your IF band pass to where the solid line is, your desired signal will be inside it and your interfering signal will be outside of it. Wide and narrow DSP roofing filters. These are fixed filters that do sort of the same kind of thing, right? On the left-hand side, there's your desired CW signal. You're using a 1,000 hertz bandwidth, and you're getting 3 signals at the same time. You pop in a 250 hertz roofing filter, and all of a sudden the 2 outside signals disappear, and your desired signal pops up. And then there are variable bandwidth filters, which are a combination of the two. They let you play with both the high end and low end, high frequency, low frequency cutoffs to make sure you're listening to just the signal you want to do. So that's the overview of radio controls, the overview of HF operating. And if you want this deck, as I said, go to hamradiouniversity.org, click on previous presentations, and you'll find the version of this that I did last January, which is basically the same as this. Again, a reminder, Ham Radio University 2022 will be Saturday, January 8th, the first Saturday after New Year's Day. Will be virtual again. Keep in touch with the Ham Radio University website for details. If you have any questions, queries, if I can be helpful, don't hesitate to email me, KS2G@ARRL.net. That's all that I have. I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'll be happy to take any if there are any. Anything? Anybody?
Anybody, don't be shy out there. Certainly someone's got a question about something.
Well, I did a fantastic job, so maybe not.
You did.
Well, actually, I've got a question.
There we go.
There you go. Got to ask a question. A question related to the automatic gain control, and this is specific, but I've got an ICOM IC718,
Okay.
Which a lot of people have. Now, I've been licensed even longer than you have, although I'm not as much into the hobby as you are, but I've been around long enough. I've never seen a radio that will not allow you to turn off its automatic gain control before. But the 718 has no way to do it unless you like go in there and start messing with it on the inside. Do you know why they might have done that? Because it seems like an AGC is so basic.
Yeah, I don't know. In fact, just the opposite. As I pointed out, oftentimes you'll want to use the AF. You want to use the RF gain control. You'll want to have command of the RF gain control. And again, in instances where there's noise and a weak signal, the AGC won't capture the signal because it's not strong enough. So what you want to do is turn off the AGC and crank back the RF gain control, which reduces the noise floor, and you turn up your audio AF gain control, which will help help you hear the signal better. So that's very strange. I agree with you. I'm not familiar with ICOM radio. I've been a Kenwood guy since the get-go, so I can't tell you why that would be so. But you would think there would be a way to turn that off.
Yeah, and the 718 is very popular. I mean, if my novice radio had those kinds of features when I got my license in '73, it would have blown my mind. But the one thing it will not do is allow you to turn off the AGC. It's crazy.
Yeah, you bring that up again. People who've been around as long as you and I have probably remember. A lot of these things I just talked about used to be station accessories. All this stuff you used to pay extra for is now built into the radio. As I said, a second VFO used to be an extra cost option. Other things like a CW keyer. Used to be an outboard device. I built an AccuKeyer when I was, back in the day when I was using my Kenwood 520S. And band scopes, right? Kenwood used to offer a very expensive pan adapter that hooked up to its radio that plugged into to an IF output on the radio, all built into the radio now. An ICOM 7300 has features that, as I said, going back in the day, you would have killed for. All built into the radio now, and again, a lot of these interference capabilities that I just outlined, they just didn't exist, I remember when IF Shift came out, it was a big deal that you could change the location of the IF bandpass to get rid of an interfering signal. It was like, wow, how about that? That kind of thing. Anyone else with anything?
It's Rob. The Ham Radio University is free, correct?
Ham Radio University is and always has been free. We are glad to receive donations. We've always recommended a donation of $5 when we were doing this in person and had the costs involved of the venue and everything else. We still didn't charge anything. It's always been a quote labor of love by the local hams in the New York City, Long Island section. There's a lot of expertise in our section. Phil Lewis, who I mentioned before, N2MUN, came up with this idea 21 years ago. He said, you know, we'll do it in the dead of winter because there's no ham fairs and there's not a lot of activity, and you know, cabin fever is setting in, and we'll see if we can get people out. And his initial idea was, it was an idea to get inactive hams reactivated. And over the years, it's been morphed into this overall educational effort. It's definitely free of charge. We did it last year virtually because we couldn't do it in person. And if my memory serves me, we had something over 700 attendees worldwide. Some from as far away. I remember to this presentation, I got a follow-up email question from a station in Israel, a guy in Israel. So yeah, by all means, put it on your calendar. It's free of charge. It's going to use again a platform called GoToWebinar, which is similar to this. You'll be able to see and hear the presentations, and it can handle a large number of people. So we're happy to have as many people as we can. Saturday, January 8th. The hours are not specifically set yet. We've usually done it from like 9 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon Eastern time. We're still debating whether to modify that at all, so maybe start earlier or something like that for our overseas attendees. But check into the hamradiouniversity.org website every now and again, and you'll be able to keep up with it.
Yeah, I want to recommend that to everyone, since it is free, especially. Check it out, and you'll see lots of seminars on there. You know, and they're free seminars, free webinars. And
yeah, I'll just add that if you go to the website, we as I said, there's up on the top bar on this menu bar, previous presentations, I think it says, or previous seminars or something like that. We have them going. We have the decks to them going back a couple of years. And we also have a YouTube channel, which we were populating a few years ago. So if you go on YouTube, Ham Radio University, you can find a number of the presentations from years past that are still pretty interesting.
I'm not sure how many people are paying attention to the chat, but I did post this link from the website for your presentation you did tonight, the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay, great. Great.
that helps. Come on, Arnold. Come on, Skip. You got some questions out there.
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to step on anybody else. Was there anybody else who had a question? Because I've already asked one.
Go ahead.
Guess not. You say you do this for hams who've been off the air. I'm curious, do you find a lot of amateurs who get their license and then are scared to get on the air because they're afraid that their radio isn't set up just right and all that?
Very, very, very common. Interestingly, there are no hard and fast figures on amateur radio population and so forth, but there are a lot of estimates. For the longest time, for decades, it was always estimated that 50% of new amateurs never got on the air, got their license. And again, remember, I said I started in 77. You go back further than that. It's a lot easier to get a license now than it used to be. It used to be a trial. If you wanted a novice license, you had to find someone to give you the test and so forth. It wasn't like today where there were volunteer examiners. Once you had your license, if you wanted to upgrade, you had to go to an FCC office, etc. And yet the estimate was always like half of licensees never got on the air. And there's no question that it's intimidating. I don't know about you, but as a novice who barely could manage 5 words a minute, and I was on the air with a straight key, my first QSOs, and it's intimidating. There's no question about it. A lot of people have mic fright, that kind of thing. I never suffered from that because I worked in the broadcast news industry. There's no question that that's it. And again, I spend entirely more time than I should, trolling around on QRZ.com and eham.net. And one of the things that I see that's, I guess, common, not only to ham radio, but to all things now, is newbies, they automatically gravitate to online to get help, right? You get a constant flow of people who post said, I just got my license. I'm thinking about setting an HF station, and here's what I have in mind, but I'm not sure what I should do, and any help would be appreciated. What follows is 35 posts from people who have 35 different recommendations, long distance, don't know the guy, don't know his physical setup, even though he tries to to explain it. And I automatically post in response to every one of those, get some in-person hands-on help from a local club, and I give them the URL for the ARRL Club Finder. Because that's it. I mean, and I'm sure you guys do it. Here on Long Island Mobile Amateur Radio Club is one of several clubs. We are blessed. Long Island Mobile Amateur Radio Club has over 300 members with a broad amount of expertise. Radio Central Amateur Radio Club out to the east of us, which geographically is more convenient to a lot of people, has lots of people. And everybody's only too glad to come in person and help you put up an antenna, help you figure out how to hook up your radio. Where does the SWR bridge? Does it go between the radio and the amplifier, or the other way around? And that's the best thing people can do. But I guess the mindset now is everything is online. They go online, they watch some YouTubes, which, by the way, can be very helpful if you know a little bit about what you're doing, what you're trying to do. But as a total newbie, I don't think it's a great way to learn amateur radio. I think clubs are the way to go. I'm a big believer in amateur radio clubs.
Let me get in there. I totally agree, and I was going to mention that earlier, and I didn't. That if anybody has any questions about any of this, or you want to see how any of this works, check your local club. And in our case, we have outings in the park now. We're trying to go to outings in the park once a month. HF radios are set up. You want to see an HF radio in operation. You want to play with an HF radio in operation. You don't need a license, a license with the class for HF if you're with somebody who's got that license. So if you're a tech, you can get on HF and you can do all the HF because we have generals and extras, and they'll just be watching over you. So you can play around. We'll show you what the buttons do. You can bring your radio and we'll show you what those buttons do. And again, you can ask Mel, right? some of the questions about what he talked about, but definitely talk to us. Just put a note on our Facebook page or on our groups.io, and we'll get back to you, or send a note to the website. Hopefully we'll have face-to-face meetings before too long, and this will all happen, at the monthly meetings.
How many members do you have in your club?
We're sitting at around 75.
That's pretty good.
We're down from where we used to be the only club in town before the suburbs grew. And then the suburbs grew, everybody moved out to the suburbs, and suburban clubs grew to 300 plus number of clubs. And the members all came from one place.
Yeah.
So we're just pretty much inner city. But I'm just recommending to everybody, just talk to us and we'll help. Right, John, you want to get in there, John Talipsky, and say anything about that, or Skip?
I was just going to say the same thing. It's interesting when you work with people who just got their general or something, one of the things you realize is listening to the radio, there's conversations going back and forth. People are talking, things are jumping in, there's pile-ups, there's interference from adjacent bands, and just knowing how to get into it. When do you jump in? What do you say? What do you say after you say something? All that, it's just not obvious. It needs somebody to kind of sit down with people and work them through it.
I'm glad Mel brought that up here, showing you what you say on the air. That's very helpful.
Yeah, as I said, I do a separate presentation on contesting. People happen across contests constantly, and they like you said, it's totally opaque. You can't figure out what it is these people are saying to each other or why on many contests. So knowing where to go to get information is key. The thing about Ham Radio University, again, this was our idea, and again, not only newbies, but we like in my contesting forum, I get a surprising number of extras, but they've never been in contesting. They've thought about it, but they don't understand how it works or whatever, that kind of thing. So we've always set up our forums to try to keep up with what's going on. So we the last couple of years we've been doing a forum on remote operating, which is very hot, but again, very hard to get going with without some kind of direction or help. And we've done stuff on SDRs, on software defined radios, so people understand what they are. There's a lot, there's a lot to learn. And as I said, what always, pains me is that people are trying to learn it in online forums where, they'll get 20 responses. Half the guys don't know what the heck they're talking about. There's more misinformation than information. And getting in touch with a local club and having a one-on-one, even via Zoom, with a local guy or gal is far superior to what I see on these online websites.
Well, I'm a newbie, and I went out with Skip on Saturday, and I learned a lot watching Skip. He was showing me the ropes. So you're right. It's a lot different passing a test versus getting out there and doing it.
Well, passing the test doesn't make you an amateur radio operator. It gives you an amateur radio operator license.
I'll be right back to you.
It takes a while to learn it. Again, field day
I will. It's just
is a great learning tool. For people to come along. When we've done field day in person, we try to do it at a local park where people actually have access. And we've had people, come along. We've had newbies come to us, who are not members of our club or anything, and they've heard about it, and they've come down and they'll sit down with someone who's operating at field day and get an explanation of different things, how it works, and they raise their questions about about HF operating and things like that. So there's nothing like in person and hands-on. I think distance learning has its limitations.
I have to say, when I first got on the air, really was with at a club outing with a couple of other hams to help, and I found contesting to actually be very useful because it's formulaic, so if the other hams told me basically what to say and what the formula was. Mm-hmm. And by going through that a number of times, I just got more and more comfortable with the radio and with the process of being online. And so I found contesting to be actually useful as a learning device.
Contesting is probably one of the best ways to hone your overall HF operating skills. All of the things that I just mentioned in this presentation, knowledge of propagation, knowing which bands to use when, knowing what to expect on each band, knowing when to switch bands. It's and of course, if you're, let's say, a CW operator, There's no better way to sort of build your skills, learn to copy faster, learn to send faster. It's great to get into new modes. For the longest time, I never operated RTTY, and I decided I wanted to get into RTTY contesting, and it was a new aspect of the hobby, a new set of tools to learn to use, learn to hook up the software to the radios. A lot of this stuff is a lot easier to do now than it used to be. And as I said, things like propagation, it's a lot easier to find out how propagation works, what's going on the bands now. When I first started out, like every night, turn on the radio, flip on 15 meters, which was my favorite band, and tune around and see if there's anything on, and tune from one end to the other and start again. And if I didn't hear anything, I said, well, maybe I'll try 20. And now I can turn on the radio and look at my band scope and see what's going on, and know I get better use of my ham radio time than I used to. And the same thing with contesting. I like contesting because you get to do a lot of hamming in a short period of time, and you get to really exercise your station in the best way you can. And learn all the things, all those controls I just mentioned, they all come into play when you're operating in a contest.
Mel, I got a question for you.
Sure.
It's Jim. I missed part of the presentation. It was a good presentation, but talking about propagation, did you happen to cover long path versus short path?
I didn't specifically, but I covered skip. If you look at the slide deck, you'll see it talks about skip.
Yeah. And fall into skip. I'm real familiar with it, but that's something that bring up to some of the newbies about the long path versus short path and the characteristics of how it sounds a little different.
Yeah, it does sound a little different. It's interesting because I recently you mentioned I recently changed antennas. I'm using a Force 12 C3SS, which is only 2 elements on each band, and my previous antenna was a high gain TH3 Mark III, which is much more narrow banded, and it was much easier for me to tell whether I'm hearing long path or short path with that old antenna. With this new antenna, because it doesn't have the front to back ratio the other one used to, I don't know whether half the time I don't know whether I should be turning my antenna or not, or whether I should just leave it where it is. But that's a good point. I'll keep that in mind as I continue.
Looking at on your band scope.
Yeah.
Can you see the when it comes up versus long path versus short path?
No, because all you're basically seeing is signal strength.
Right.
When you look at a band scope, right? You look at the waterfall, right? And I
didn't know whether you'd see it in the waterfall.
No, you wouldn't, because
a little bit more of a time delay, or you'd see it mirrored or echoed.
No, you wouldn't. Or what you might see is relative signal strength to whatever else is happening on the band. So in other words, if you're if I'm pointed northeast to Europe and I'm seeing all these strong signals from Europe, and I look at the band scope and I see this other signal that's weaker in the same location, and if I turn my beam and that trace gets brighter, I know I've been listening to long path.
Gotcha.
Right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I got a question. Do you think it's harder to get on the air now than it would have been back when we got on? And the reason I ask is it just seems, first of all, like it's more complicated. The radios are more complicated. And second of all, back when we got on, there was a novice band where everybody was as incompetent as everybody else. So there was no shame in getting on there and sending it 5 words a minute, because everybody else was too.
Yeah, 5 words a minute if you were lucky. Well,
it seems like everybody's intimidated by it now.
Well,
but I didn't know enough to be intimidated.
Well, let me answer that in several parts. I think it's harder. I think it's harder now to set up an HF station because of antenna restrictions, HOAs, CCNRs. It's a freaking nightmare. That's the worst of it. Okay, so putting that aside, okay, if you can set up a station, it's actually it may be intimidating, but it's really easier than ever. The equipment, first of all, is less expensive than it's ever been. You know, everybody talks about, you know, ham radio is so expensive. So I said I have this collection of old Lafayette radio catalogs. You look at what equipment used to cost, even you know, back to the 70s when I first started, or let alone go back to the 60s when I was a shortwave listener and so forth, what you got for your money. Ham radio gear has never been cheaper, okay? And it's never, as I said, it's never been more featured. There are more things built in now than there's ever been. I mean, again, it's not my favorite radio, but as a newbie, the IC 7300, it's phenomenal what you get for $1,000. It's just mind-boggling, you know. It's not a competition grade radio. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody who said, gee, I want to get into contesting and I need a radio for that. It's just not built for that kind of thing. But if you think about what you get for your money, all the features and so on, yeah, there's more features in it, but it's not, it's easier to set up, right? Think about it. If you go back far enough, right? You used to have a separate transmitter and a separate receiver, and they were linked together by a TR switch, which went to your antenna feed line, which went to an SWR bridge so that you could see if, you know, everything was, you know, tuned right, through an external tuner, which was all manual, and you had to know how to manipulate, you know, like 3 different dials on the tuner. And that was what was involved in setting up a ham radio station. Now you buy a black box, you know, you buy an IC 7300, you buy a, you know, 12-volt power supply, you plug the power supply into the radio, you plug the radio into your antenna system, you plug in a microphone if you want to use a mic or a key, and you're in business. I mean, it's really, you know, it's you know, again, back in the day, people used to come to me and say, can you help me set up my stereo system? You know, plug in the speakers and the turntable and the tape deck and you know, and then all-in-ones came along, and you know, so it's the same kind of thing in my mind as that. I think it's never been easier to get a license, whether you like that or not. That's a different discussion. Never been easier. It's never been more. Let me put it this way: it's never been more convenient to get a license. It's never been easier to learn what you need to learn to get a license. It's never been easier to acquire a good quality radio for a modest price, and it's never been easier to set it up. And yet all these people are on QRZ.com saying, help me set up my station, right? Buy radio, plug in power supply, plug in antenna, plug in microphone, end of story, right? It's in my mind, it's really pretty simple. But to your point, that doesn't make it any less intimidating for the newbies, right? It's sort of like when you're new at anything, right? You know, I've been playing golf for, you know, longer than I've been in ham radio, but the first time you get on a golf course as a newbie, and you know, you're on the tee, and there's 3 people next to you watching you take your first swing, even, you know, after, you know, 40 something years of playing golf, when I stand on the first tee and there were 3, you know, people, 2 of whom I've never met, watching me take my first swing, I'm intimidated, right? Same thing with ham radio. You know, who's out there? What am I going to sound like? What are they going to think of me? The good news is they don't see you. So, you know, you can be, as they say, you can do it in your underwear.
I guess at age 13, I was too stupid to be intimidated.
Right.
By basically.
Well, you know, think about it. Kids are fearless. You know, like I said, I think about golf. I watch kids on a golf course. I watch like these 14, 15-year-old kids. They're fearless. They don't think about anything. I'm there worried about my grip and my stance and the ball in the right place. They just get up there and they whack away at it. And kids are like that. It's right. The same thing. I play guitar. You get little kids going on guitar lessons, and they're just like banging away at the thing. They don't care. They're like you said, they're not old enough to have, you know, to have the sense to. They're not old enough to know what they don't know, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had a general coverage receiver for my first novice receiver. It was a piece of junk, but I got 40 states before I knew any better.
That's it. That's it. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm new to all this stuff, and I've got a technician's license, and I'd like to take the general course, and I'm looking for a general class, a general class to help me get ready for the course. Does anyone know of a class that's coming up soon.
Any of you guys, does your club do classes
Uh,
and
we've-
testing?
We've discussed a possible general class coming up, but we haven't really set that too much in motion yet. I believe it's possible the Gwinnett Club might have one. You'd have to check their website, gars.org, GARS.org.
Okay.
I think they mentioned possibly doing one, obviously further along in the plans than we are. We just recently, within the last week here, we've talked about that. So we'll probably do one in the future, but maybe not soon enough for you. But I would definitely check out. I think the Gwinnett group may have mentioned doing one coming up.
You know what occurs to me? Get in touch with your ARRL section manager. I don't know
Yeah.
who that is in your area. Get in touch with the section manager. They're usually plugged in with, what clubs are, doing classes and testing and that's kind of.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And also, I mean, there's with this Zoom now that there's always opportunities for online classes. Obviously not as nice as being in person, but
Yeah, I was looking for an in-person class. I know.
yeah, I know. And that's the best way to do it. But I check with the GARS group, and Mel had a good suggestion too. We can reach out to our new section leader, Rick Millsaps. I'm drawing a blank on his call at the moment, and the outgoing David Benoist. We can check with those folks and post it on the website as to who might be doing one locally coming up, and then of course keep an eye on us because we've talked about doing it. So
I will say that David Kassler's videos, KE0OG on YouTube, matches the ARRL general study book chapter for chapter. And I've looked at them and they're pretty good. So if you can tolerate a video course, which is, I don't think it's as good as in person, if you can tolerate it, those seem to be pretty good.
Skip, what was that? How do I find it on YouTube?
Well, it's on YouTube. It's David Kassler, Kasler, I think. And I believe his call is KE0OG. And it tracks the ARRL. If you buy the ARRL study guide,
Yes.
he has a series of videos that go along with each chapter, and they're pretty good.
Okay. Yeah.
Also posted in the link, W4EEY's YouTube. It's a whole series. And he also does the class over Zoom if you wanted interaction.
Say that again. Where would I find that?
It's in the chat. I put the link in the chat
Oh.
for YouTube. It's W4EEY. So his follows the book like Dave Kassler.
Okay.
I don't know if Dave Kassler's doing like Zoom classes, interactive, but W4EEY is doing it where, you can ask questions and stuff. I don't know how often he does it, but you can go to his website. He's out of North Carolina.
All right. Thank you.
That's great.
hey, Richard, if you could just send me an email to president@atlantaradiclub.org. And I just checked the GARS website. They're doing a tech hamgram this month. So I misunderstood what they were doing. So if you could send me an email, and I'll check with Rick or David and I and see if we can come up with an in-person class for you here shortly.
Okay. What's your email address again?
Just president@atlantaradioclub.org.
Okay.
And send that to me, and I'll see if I can hook up with David or Rick tonight and get you an answer for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Richard, I would go to qrz.com and take their tests over and over again. That helped me a lot. I just passed my general. And also Jason Johnston has a YouTube channel where he's got general classes, and they're excellent.
Okay.
And if you have any questions, Richard.
It's called Ham Radio 2 on YouTube.
Okay. Oh yeah, I've seen him out there.
There's another group that ham test online.
I've heard of them too.
Yeah, you have to pay for them, but they're really good. They track what you do, and they present the questions to you, emphasizing the questions you've missed before. So they sort of, every time you take the test, they personalize it to how you've performed on that test before. And they also show you, which is not useful, but is interesting, how you do with everybody else who's ever taken it. So you can see if you see how you're doing. And as you get better, you can watch yourself move up in the rankings.
And that was ham radio tests?
Ham test online.
Ham test online. Okay.
Yes, I use them for my general and extra, and I thought they were very good.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for all the suggestions, guys. Like I say, I know online, but I was hoping to find one that I could go to in person just to meet some people and get the one-on-one help.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get one going, but yeah, sounds like it'd be fun to teach the general. So we're going to look at that.
All right.
Mr. Tlipsky.
Any other questions for Mel, guys? All right, hang around for just a second. We'll give away a gift certificate for the HRO here locally. Hey, Mel, thanks a lot again. It was another great presentation. I've seen some of your others, and actually the HRU looks, I've never stopped by that, but I think I'm going to this year. So just for the heck of it, to see what's offered there. So thanks for participating in that also. But yes, thanks again for being with us tonight, and we certainly do appreciate it. I think new and old got something out of this tonight, so it was good for everybody. I know Jim said he's been around for a while, and he's got a few things out of it too. So
well, that's great. I appreciate that. Thanks very much for the opportunity. I enjoy doing these kind of things. If in the future you'd like to see the spiel on contesting, let me know. I'll be happy to do that for you.
Okay. Well, hey, there you go.
At some future date, because
I'm sure we can.
I'm writing that down.
Okay,
yeah, we've
sure.
got it written down. You're committed now, so
yeah, let me know. And again, I'm going to duck out of here. Let you guys do your business meeting, whatever. I'll just remind you again. Just go to hamradiouniversity.org. It's got the previous presentations. It's got the reminder about Ham Radio University 2022 on January 8th, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys again. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mel.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Mel.
All right, real quick before we draw for the gift certificate, one thing to kind of segue onto tonight's conversation, we normally do an outing in the park every month. The idea is to entice y'all to get out and participate in the club. Also to give you an opportunity to, as we always invite you, to bring your radio with you if you're looking to hook it up for the first time or hook it up and learn some things on it. Bring it. We'll hook it up and give you a chance to use it. And there'll be somebody there that's, I'm sure, familiar enough with it to answer any questions you might have, especially if you're new. You're gonna hear some of these terms thrown around, like mic gain and mic fright, and like Jim talked about, the shame of getting on. We certainly want that to stay at home when you come, and just realize any question you might come with is certainly not a dumb question, because I'm sure we've all asked it at one point or another. So the idea is to get you out and make you feel comfortable, let you come out and bring your radio if you want to. And if you don't want to bring your radio, that's fine. Come out and you can hop on whatever radio we have hooked up. It's a good chance to learn about some antennas that we might have strung up. So like I said, please do join us. October, we were trying to shoot for a satellite weekend, but we're going to have to push that off to November. So what we're going to do is a POTA outing for October. And right now we're pointing towards Saturday, October 30th from about 10 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. It's trick-or-treating the next day. So we know a lot of folks have got a lot of things going on that weekend, but we wanted to try to do something to get, like I said, a monthly outing, and this is going to be it for this month. It'll be a POTA outing. If you wanted to see Parks on the Air and how that's done. This will be your opportunity. Like I said, bring your radio. We'll hook it up. If you don't, even if you've just taken it out of the box and you've never had power pole connectors or anything like that, we'll try to bring something so that we can hook you up with some power pole connectors too, and introduce you to those. But we've been using batteries the last couple of events, and it's worked really well. So you can come out and find out that you don't need a plug in a wall somewhere to operate your radio in the field. So one other quick thing here, while I draw this here, we're working with increasing our work with the Red Cross in Atlanta because we use their facilities for a meeting. So we're trying to grow our drawing a blank on the word, but we're trying to grow our partnership with them and how we interact with the Red Cross. So as of right now, we're looking at doing some special event stations with them in the coming year. We're actually working with Wayne down there around to try to get us the antenna working. We found out that an off-center fed dipole does not work real well in the environment that it is down there. So we're actually learning some things about some of the different equipment we're trying to put up there right now. So he's hoping to have his antenna back up by the end of the month. We're gonna bring in our expert antenna person, Bill Perkins. He's gonna give us a little hand, and we're gonna hope to get them back on the air. And like I said, we're going to grow that partnership and do more with the Red Cross going forward. We still don't have a go-ahead to meet there yet. They're still working. Literally, there's nobody in that building. We've been there. Skip and I have been there the last 2 weeks doing some work with Wayne on the antennas, and there's literally nobody there. So they're still kind of in their COVID protocol. So we're hoping to get to a point where we can get back to in-person meetings. Worst case, maybe we might have to find a restaurant or something somewhere. We are looking at doing a end of the year party, which will be in person. Stay tuned for that, and stay tuned to our website and our Facebook page for anything we might be doing as far as dates, times, and locations. We'll always post stuff there. Our winner for tonight is for the $25 gift certificate. The HRO is Bob WK2Y. Is he still with us? Bob? I don't see him. Okay, we'll try another here. All right, Chuck, WA4ETI. Nope. All right, Jim, KD4PDY. Nope. All right. Wes, KE4SJM. I think I saw him drop out. Yep. All right, Dave, W6NEL. No.
Hey, I'm here.
Are you? I didn't see you.
Yeah.
There you go. We have.
Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. All right. Well, you won the $25 gift certificate. I'm going to HRO in the morning, so what I'll do is I'll have them put it on your so-called account. Everybody seems to have one down there when you're purchasing something, so it'll be underneath your name. So when you go to buy something, you can. I think you can buy locally over the phone with them, but you may have to go in person to use that. But it'll be underneath your call sign at HRO tomorrow. So
I need some RG8X, so I'll be there Saturday.
All right. Well, there you go. So it'll be sitting there for you. We, like I said, we've got our October POTA event coming up, October 30th. Keep an eye on the website for that. If you're a dues paying member or want to be, we're always willing to take your money. And if you haven't renewed and want to, please do go to the website and renew. Money does obviously make the world go around in many cases, and it obviously makes most clubs go around. So it helps support our repeaters, phone lines to the repeaters, club outings. The club gives away a scholarship to the ARRL every year, so it helps to support that. And it also helps to support other things we're doing. So please do think about becoming a member if you haven't. If you're new and have recently received your license, we offer the free one-year membership, and instructions on how to do all that are found on the website. So please go there and think about contributing. It's a big help and very much appreciated. If you're interested in taking a bigger role in the club and helping make things go around, give us a call. Let us know what you're interested in doing. If it's repeaters, We're looking for help with our website, help with newsletter, help with repeaters. So if any of these things, if you're interested in being a little more involved in the Hamfest than just showing up and volunteering on Saturday and Sunday, send us an email at, you can send it to president@atlantaradioclub.org, and we'll let you know what we have available. We'll find a place for you somewhere. We do want everybody to be involved with the club, because we don't want it to be the typical 2% do all the work like most organizations are. So the more the merrier. We have a lot more fun if a lot more people involved. So if you have an interest, let me know, and we'll find you a spot. We'll even make you president maybe in a year if you want to do that too. So, but we certainly appreciate all the help. Do anybody have any questions for anybody on any questions about the club or any other things we can help you with? Not?
Let me say so. I don't have a question for the club.
Okay.
Just want to remind everybody that we have our weekly lunch tomorrow at Mellow Mushroom in Brookhaven at 12:30. We've been meeting for lunch face to face at Mellow Mushroom for the past, I don't know, month and a half, 2 months. We started meeting again, and we try and meet outside when we can, when the weather's okay for that. It may still be warm enough, so we're trying to go for distancing that way. But it's, we're not that tight inside where everybody's, crammed up against each other. There's some space there too. So Mellow Mushroom on Peachtree Road. I guess it's still Peachtree up there in Brookhaven, Friday, tomorrow at 12:30. And the one more thing, our meeting next week, next month, our speaker next month, we're going to have 3 officials from ARRL talking about the zoning laws for antennas and what they're doing to get antennas legalized in HOAs. They're trying to get Congress to pass legislation to require HOAs to allow ham radio antennas. And that's, so far, they haven't gotten very far with it, but they'll talk about what they're doing about it. They'll talk about ideas they have now, what you can do before they do something about it. And they'll be talking about zoning in general, because some, municipalities make antennas illegal. And so it's ARRL next month talking about antennas and the Antenna Parity Act, which is the congressional bill they're working on, and HOAs. So that should be a good one. Next November, I think it's November 2nd, first Thursday in November. Just watch the website.
Yeah, and also lunch has been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of people showing up. We don't want to think you're not welcome. If you have to work during the week, it's hard to get down there. So we're trying to at least get to maybe once a month, one Saturday breakfast every month. We started last month and had a few people turn out. This month, it'll probably be one of the last 2 weekends in October. Either possibly the weekend before the outing or maybe the morning of. We can meet at the restaurant nearby and then go do our radio stuff. So keep an eye on the website for that. So if you don't have a chance to join us on the week on Fridays for lunch, we're like I said, we're going to try to do at least a once a month breakfast. So keep an eye on the website for that if you want to come out and socialize, ask questions. It's a good place also to learn about some things if you have questions about how to use something. How does DMR, who's into DMR, who's into D-Star, that kind of stuff. We can, there's plenty of people that can answer those questions. So it's another opportunity to ask questions and get to know your fellow hams. So just keep an eye on the website for, if you don't receive emails, we have an IO group that we belong to. You can join that through the website also. That way you can kind of stay abreast of what's going on and receive emails that are a little more timely than maybe looking for it on Facebook. So consider that also. Any questions, anything, anybody have any questions for the club? Any suggestions on something you'd like to see program wise coming up or an event? All right, if not, certainly we'll look forward to seeing you at the POTA outing on the 30th, and then the Hamfest, I believe, is going to be the following weekend after that on the 6th in Stone Mountain. So please look for us there. And if you'd like to come man the club table, hit us up with an email, president@atlantaradioclub.org, and I'll pencil you in on the schedule. And it's a great way to meet folks standing there at the table and talking about the club. You don't have to know everything. A lot of times it's real simple, and just saying hi to someone and striking up a conversation is all it is. So it's real easy. So if you have an interest in doing that too, please let me know. Membership's been growing. The club's been working. The board's been working hard on getting renewals up to date. COVID really took a shot the club took a shot in the arm with COVID in more ways than one. So renewals were way down just because people didn't know if they had expired or not from a membership stance wise. So we kind of got a chuckle out of that when our recent meeting, someone talked about expired hams, and we mean by membership. So anyway, so if you're not sure if you're expired or not, membership wise, you can contact us at the club. Aid KJ4CUY can be reached through email. His email address is either treasurer@atlantaradioclub.org or secretary. So either way, you can reach him and he can answer that question for you. So if we don't have any other questions, I guess we can close this for the night. Thank you for being with us, and look forward to seeing you at a couple of the opportunities coming up to be in attendance with the club. So if not, we'll see you next month, the first weekend or first Thursday in November. Y'all, if we don't have any other questions, y'all have a great evening, and please do join us on Saturday, October 30th for our POTA outing. It'll be a lot of fun. Bring your radio too.
Thanks.
All right, y'all have a good evening.